Welcome to MasterMined, the behavioral health business podcast. We go beyond the clinical to explore what it really takes to build, grow, and lead a successful behavioral health organization. Each episode features candid, practical conversations with industry leaders, offering strategies to scale your business while staying true to your mission. From branding and marketing to leadership, culture, and compliance, we cover the tools you need to balance care and commerce with confidence. MasterMined is brought to you by Snapshot, a digital agency on a mission to serve with heart, execute with excellence, and build something bigger together. And now, welcome to MasterMined.
Hey everyone, welcome back to MasterMined. I'm here with my co-host Jeff Skillen, founder of Skillset Enterprises. And joining us today is Patrick Dunn, Chief Strategy Officer at Hansei Solutions. He's a nationally recognized behavioral health executive with deep expertise in clinical and operational development. He's held leadership roles at major organizations like Journey Pure, Sierra Tucson, and Landmark Recovery, where he's helped scale programs, launch impactful aftercare technologies, and drive outcomes for clients with co-occurring disorders. Today's topic is billing smarter, not harder, and we'll be discussing everything from billing solutions and revenue cycles to parity, payer trends, and pay-to-patient problems. We might even touch on the fallout UnitedHealthcare is experiencing and what the rest of us can learn from it. So buckle up and enjoy the show. Patrick, welcome to the show. Jeff, great to have you back again.
Thanks, Mark. It's always great to be here.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So, Patrick, I was super stoked when you agreed to join us today. And this is the first time on the podcast that we're really kind of digging into payer land, and we're getting into that part of it. And of course, that's a super important part of everybody's business. But before we get there, I've known you over the years in a lot of different capacities. Talk about your evolution in this industry, if you don't mind, because it's like, from clinician to where you are now at Hansei. So just give us the backstory.
Yeah, it's been a long one. I'm in long-term recovery. All right. So I was introduced to recovery through my own personal recovery. And I started when I was still in school, became a tech, right? And then I was a counselor. And then I was a CDAC. Right, and then I went to graduate school, right? Then become a therapist. So I'm really grateful for how it's evolved and the kind of experience you get from sitting in all the different chairs. Mm-hmm. And I moved back to Nashville in probably 2010, and Dr. Sam McMaster, a good friend and a great researcher in substance abuse, asked me if I wanted to start a program, and I was like, sure, I'll start a program. I said I want to have an aftercare app, and I want to get a bunch of horses. And he's like, hey, no problem. And so that's what we did.
Logical. Horses,
easy.
Horses app.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go.
And so, I'm an equine therapy guy, and I just love the power of horses, and that was important to me. And in that time was like 2013 and 14. The campus style, in Tennessee made a lot of sense.
Yep.
And so the aftercare, it was important to me from my own experience, and what I saw was a real deficit in treatment was the commitment to stay connected with patients once they leave. Right. And that's tough. It's hard to get connected to patients while they're there.
Right.
Especially when they leave. And so we partnered up with, a couple people and built an aftercare app and had a lot of success with it. And we would, train, patients on it. And when after they graduated, we continued to have peer coaches stay connected with them. And that gave us some outcomes. And then we would take those outcomes back to the payers and leverage better rates. So I think that was, it was right on time. Kind of before its time.
I was going to say, that's pretty visionary. In 2013, to think about an app that people were using on smartphones at that time and use that for outcomes, that's pretty early.
Well, we went to Sierra Tucson. Mm-hmm. We went to Sierra Tucson. Sierra Tucson says, our alumni program is huge. We've been around forever. This makes total sense to us. Let's do it. And we partnered with them, and we built one for them. The majority of executives at that time I talked to said, well, what do we get paid for it? I said, well, it's on the back end, right? It's alumni. It's keeping people sober and everything. They said, yeah, that just doesn't make sense. Fast forward to 2020.
Yep.
Everybody was doing it,
right.
So maybe a little before the time, but we had it was a great process and understanding, allowed me to work with, Sierra and Acadia and all their team. And from a research perspective, really teaches you a lot about how to engage, right? Because you can't engage with somebody. You can't ask them the question, you can't get the answer. Mm-hmm. So a lot of fun, really proud of the work that we did there. And then since then, probably in 2021, I was introduced to Hansei, and I'd never been on the other side, right? I'd been in, operations and executive at a level of, commercial insurance. So I knew personally the pain points of revenue cycle, like the what doesn't work and how and what a struggle it is, and not knowing what money's coming in, and what are you going to do if you're audit and hiring a team and all that stuff. So I knew the pain points. And I met Aaron Burke, the CEO of Hansei, and we had a really good conversation. And I said, hey, I think with my knowledge of the pain points and a little bit of a book of business for being in the field for a while, and your product, I think we can really do something here. And so we were able to not only grow a company probably 5 or 6 times in the last couple of years, we were able to create a platform of educating providers, and not just our own, about payer relationships and, probably a lot of stuff that we're going to get into today.
Yeah.
Before we go a little further, I want to go back to when you actually presented that data from your app to payers back in the day.
Yeah.
How did that go? I mean, how did they respond?
Yeah, so payers are really interesting, right? So they have their own needs that they do, right? So they're an insurance company, and they need to they care about patients, and they care about health, but they also care about the bottom line.
Right.
So outcomes are great, but you have to translate outcomes in a way that makes sense to them. And an outcome that makes sense to a payer is we're going to keep this person healthier, and therefore they're going to use their insurance less. Right, and the only way you can do that is to stay connected in a whole health model. So we were able to do that, and it became kind of a no-brainer, right? To pay more, right? And right now we're starting to see some payers really, over a decade, right? Now we're starting to see them embrace peer coaching. Okay, maybe this does make sense, right? And we're starting to see that a little more. Never would have thought it would have taken 12 years,
right?
But sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But it's great to see that the efficacy is there now.
Yeah, what have you seen as being some of the bigger evolutions of the revenue cycle management over the last few years?
Yeah, so it would follow in kind of the treatment, right? The treatment space. So we are primarily behavioral health, right? And every 6 months I want to get real distracted, and I'll be like, hey, what if we do this? Why don't we get into this? Why don't we get into this?
Right.
No, let's just focus on this. There's a huge market and there's a huge need. So we focus, primarily on facility-based behavioral health, and in facility-based behavioral health, we follow the trends of the facilities, of the facility and the payer relationships. And probably in the last, I don't know, Jeff, maybe 8 years or so, we've seen the big shift from out-of-network to in-network. And it's been a change, but it's been a good change because with in-network, there's a little bit more accountability for providers, which is good. We've seen, labs hit their peak and then kind of come back down, which has changed the space. But I think overall, the more contracted relationships that treatment centers can have with payers, the more accountability and the more kind of communication there's going to be. And so we've seen a rise in that, which has been a really good thing. But with that, less money. So you see a lot of people, myself included, who design and build a treatment center thinking you're going to get $100, for a length of stay, but next thing you know, you're only getting $40. So it's kind of changed, the way treatment is. So change is good, change is hard, and I think that what we're seeing the number of beds that are in network are probably dramatically higher than they were, 5 years ago, and that's going to continue to rise. But with that, we've also seen, more commercial places, kind of expand marketplace and expand Medicaid, and so we've seen those types of services really get better, which is really important too.
You're leading right into a topic that I think would be interesting. You sit kind of as a translator between providers and payers, so you kind of see both sides of the fence, right? A lot of people look at this revenue cycle almost like a cat and mouse game.
That's right.
Right? And so it's so who's winning right now, the cat or the mouse? Or,
yeah.
What games are being played right now?
Well, I think when you're an operator, you're thinking, I'm going to put on my gloves and we're going to fight them. We're going to fight them. But as you get bigger, that just makes sense. You get tired. You get tired of fighting, and it's a fixed fight.
Right.
Well,
I was going to say,
they're much bigger than you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to wear yourself out fighting.
Our big goal, in my, kind of personal goal when you talk about, kind of brand awareness and education is, let us give you the information, right? Instead of it being like a trick, right? Oh, we're going to catch you if you don't do this right and this right. Every payer has different requirements. Sometimes those change by level of care. Sometimes those change by state, and very often they're unpublished.
Right. Exactly.
So a lot of content that I want to show is, this is what we're seeing, right? This is what we're seeing. This is what we're seeing. Instead of, I'm going to get behind this and maybe I won't get caught, where I think it used to be if you did something wrong and they caught you, you'd go into audit. Audits are a lot more customary now. So my goal is to help someone be prepared for it, so it's a lot quicker. Because when you say, if you're in the Southeast and Anthem's a 75% payer yours, and you go into prepayment review and they stop payment, you're going to have some problems.
Right, for sure.
Paying your people. So we want that, even though that you can't always know when that's going to happen, we want everybody to be audit proof, right? Prepared at all times. And you do that by knowing the things, auditing your own records, leaning into compliance and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So the opacity in terms of a lot of these procedures, if you will, that are unknown to people, it's almost like knowing the secret menu at In-N-Out Burger, right?
Yeah.
So do you give people sort of the insider tip to here's what's happening at United, here's what's happening at Blue Cross?
100%.
Okay. And so are payers glad that you do that?
So payers spend a lot of money on auditing providers, lots of money, So I've had conversations through Trevor at TPN. He'd be a great person to bring on here.
Yep.
He said, hey, man, I've got Optum in Louisiana saying they want somebody to build a billing 101 for people that are doing it in-house because they spend so much money
Yep.
on audits and stuff like that. So yes, they want it to be clear. I mean, they want the good guys to be able to get their money, and they want the people that aren't doing good. They want to spend their time on that, and that's what we all want.
Got it. Okay. Well, that actually makes a lot of sense. So it's really not white hat and black hat in your mind.
We really not trying. So we're we've grown to a size now where we have a seat at the table. Very often we do a lot of audits for payers. We sit down there. We do. A lot of roundtables with the payers. They say this is what we need, this is what we're looking for, and we've uncovered a lot of partnership opportunity there. Mm-hmm. So Optum recently said, hey, we really need young adult, right? We really need failure to launch programs, and this is where we need them. So we go back to our providers and said, hey, what do you think about opening an 18 to 24-year-old program specifically on this and this area? And then they can get ahead and instead of it being a risk, go ahead and have that conversation with Optum and then be able to get a kind of a pro forma or a scope of what that would look like.
How far ahead are payers typically looking? Are they looking 12 months ahead, 18 months ahead, or is it literally just the next quarter?
I would say they look back, to be able to forecast what's going on. And so when they say, hey, we need young adult, what they're saying is, the insurance, our 18 to 24-year-olds are using their insurance a whole bunch, and we're seeing a lot of recidivism.
Yep.
We're seeing them going to the ER a month after they go to treatment. So this insurance relationship isn't working financially, but we also know it's not working for the health of the person.
Right.
And it's not going to end well. Right. So what they're doing is they're kind of taking what their current data is and using that to say, hey, this is what we need. Yeah.
What are some of those things, Patrick, that come up that create like friction between the payer and the providers? Are there common things that you're seeing today?
Yes. So, like any kind of large business, sometimes they have different departments, and all the departments don't communicate. Like Anthem's huge, right? And so it's frustrating when departments don't communicate. So you can have one department being like, okay, maybe we're going to put you in prepayment review. We just want to look at some stuff, right? But then you have another department that's trying to recoup money, right? And then you have your account manager through Anthem, right? But they might not be the one managing the credentialing. They could outsource that to somebody else. So with large scale, it's the communications sometimes really hard. I think by far the hardest thing for a provider is when you get an audit. When you get that letter and it says, hey, you're in trouble, mm-hmm. right? And we plan for that, right? We have specific departments that deal with that, and we've seen it a lot, So we say, hey, it's okay. Let's just look at it. Let's have some communication. We have communication with the reps. We know these people in the SIU departments, and we say, hey, what's going on here? How do we solve this? And usually on the front end, we can make it a lot less painful and a lot quicker with that communication. But I think sometimes providers want to be like, call a lawyer, right? We're going legal,
right? And
we all know that legal costs a lot and it goes a long way,
right?
It takes a long time, so. We always try to, lean into the partnership and our experience to be able to resolve that stuff. But yeah, when the money stops coming in, that's always the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no doubt you have deep relationships on the provider side.
Yeah.
How is it cultivating those relationships on the payer side? What does that actually look like? And I mean, do they have deep relationships in our industry?
Yeah, they do.
They do.
They really do, because it saves them money. As payers and the in-network and the expansion of Medicaid, we're seeing more marketplace. It makes more sense, and there's just a lot of movement on the payer sides from state to state. I mean, you'll see payers, Ambetter, pull out of commercial in one state, but then
right.
Double down on Medicaid there, or paying different rates and stuff like that. So the more communication that we can have, the better. So a lot of times we work a lot with the another thing that's happened in the last 10 years is private equity has a seat at the table a lot more on the decision making for
right.
Parent companies, and we're talking to those guys a lot, and we're saying, hey, this is the state we like, this is the state here, this is the state you should go in here, and there's sometimes we're like, hey man, you need to stay out of here until something changes,
mm-hmm.
with certain payers. So those conversations are really happening, but communication is by far the key.
So does that happen in really just sort of an informal setting, or how would you advise providers to have more of a streamlined conversation? Obviously, not everybody can know Patrick Dunn,
yeah.
right? But it's like, but if they did, I mean, what would you advise them to do to really get closer to those providers and not be so fearful?
Yeah. So if you have an account manager, I would say always push and always ask to talk to the, the regional or the district. Invite them out. Let them see the work that you do, mm-hmm. right? So it's easy when you're just seeing the bills come in. You see it on paper, like, it's a treatment center. a lot of us are doing really good work, really strong work, you know, and the more you can make it personal and not numbers, I think it's always going to be the better. You know, so always, you know, invite people to come out, always host them. You're seeing a lot more of payer representatives at conferences. You know, pull them aside after a panel. Say, hey, thank you so much. Let me get your contact, you know. And I've been seeing a lot of Cigna reps at conferences, a lot of the research, a lot of the value-based thing, and they're trying to figure it out too, right? They're trying to serve people more efficiently and people get better, you know. So I would say, you know, reach out at any opportunity, or if you see them, talk to them, or even, you know, attend a conference maybe that you wouldn't normally attend. You don't have to sponsor it, but attend there to have those conversations. Yeah.
I have noticed attending more and more conferences, it's like payers are showing up. I mean, they used to never be present. I mean, I was really surprised to see, you know, Evernorth had a really strong presence, and I'm seeing them speaking on panels, and they're like, we want to work with you, and it feels different.
Yes.
I mean, is there a shift that?
Well, at first you're like, oh, this is a trick,
right?
You know, but it's not. You know, they really do.
I mean, that was precisely my thought. I was like,
they're hiring departments for outreach to providers, you know. So I mean, it's really evolved into how do we make this, you know, how do we have these partnerships, you know, how do we grow and solve this problem together? Because, you know, the truth is, it doesn't always feel like it's getting better, when it comes to substance abuse and mental health. So something needs to change.
I mean, at first I was like, okay, this is a marketing gimmick where they're trying to show some altruism.
That's right.
I mean, that was my first thought. I was like, okay, we're going to put a smiley face on what's been a very difficult relationship, right? But it feels like there's some more honesty.
Oh, 100%. When you get them on the phone, and so we'll bridge that, and then we'll have the provider and the payer on, and they'll say, hey, we want to see this, this, and this. You're like, oh, I'm taking notes. No problem, you know, because if you can do what it is that they're looking for, and so at Hansei, we know that stuff because we backed into all that. From doing, I mean, I think we're processing like $1 billion of worth of claims a year, you know, to providers, and so we learned all the you know, the compliance stuff based on backing into it through audits. Most of the stuff's unpublished, right? And then we share that information. And if you can push clean claims and clean documentation, you're going to get paid a lot sooner. You're going to be able to forecast revenue for your business easier, and then you're going to be able to grow or scale, you know, or optimize whatever it is that you want to do.
Well, we're backing right into a topic that a lot of smaller providers don't really have, and that's data.
Yes.
So, I mean, because I know that when you're talking with payers, what they want is data. They don't want the anecdotes. They don't want the stories. I mean, those are nice. But what they really want to see is they want to see data. They want to see trends. So how do you step into that to really help some of these providers in terms of providing systems and data that maybe they don't know how to get to?
Well, behavioral health is always interesting because there's always been a lack of partnership between providers. You know, NATAP has done a really good job. They're really, you know, putting a push and emerging, and Force has really said, hey, let's get together. Let's share this data, right? And you can be a one IOP, or you can be a parent company. They've done a really good job, and they're aggregating all that data together, and they're showing it, you know, as a partnership. And it doesn't have to be there, but it has to be somewhere. You know, when you're small, to get bigger and to have, you know, more attention, you need to, you know, partner with some other things, and you can do that at the state level. You can do it at a national level, because when you go and talk to parents, like, well, what do you want to see? They're not going to tell you, hey, do this outcome, do this scale, this scale.
Right.
You know, they're going to say, just show us. Right. And so I think that, you know, Force and some other organizations, I know Sam's Institute of Behavioral Health based here in Nashville has done a really good job to say, hey, if we can show this, 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 and this, it results in a healthier person and, you know, a better result for the insurance company.
Yeah, I'm really interested to get your take on like how you're seeing technology, more specifically like automations and AI kind of shaping this entire industry from revenue cycle.
Man, AI is interesting to say the least. You know, I'm always asking ChatGPT stuff, you know, and you know, it's important. So unlike, you know, medical or other departments, behavioral health, especially revenue cycle, is subjective. It is, you know, so take utilization review. You know, maybe just a couple years ago, almost 100% of reviews was a clinician taking the notes and saying, you know, and saying, hey, this is what this needs, this is what this needs. So your notes could be okay, right? As long as the clinician doing the UR was really good, right? Well, as we've evolved and as insurance companies are growing, they've made probably we're seeing 50 to 60% of those utilization reviews being fax or web portals. So there's not a clinician anymore to be able to take that documentation and make it really good. So now your documentation has to be really, really good because there's not an opportunity for someone to interpret it and translate it.
Right.
That's where AI comes in, right? So AI not so much to write the note, you know, but to screen it, to audit it, to check it, you know, and that's what we're using AI for, and we continue to, and that's what we're seeing. So when it comes to AI to be able to scrub, so if you look at a chart, say you go to treatment for 40 days, right? Your chart could be hundreds of pages long, right? I think traditionally, you get, you know, Julie gets a highlighter, and here she goes,
right?
You know, spends 2 days on it, when AI can do it in probably 20 seconds. But you have to feed it the right information. So there's a lot of opportunity there for AI, and I think sometimes people think, well, what's it going to do? Just kind of write the note? And there's a lot more that it can do than just that, And we're seeing a lot of third parties do it. We're also seeing some EHRs. I know our EHR is starting to develop the AI for that. In addition to using tech for automation, right? How do we make this more kind of streamlined as the world continues to go to a nearshore offshore model? Because the payers have been doing that for a long time when it comes to majority of their reps being nearshore or offshore.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is consistency, cleaner claim, faster revenue. Right, and it's more of a streamlined UR approach. I mean, what's the downside of that?
So I think whatever size you are, I think it used to be where you'd be like, all right, well, this is pretty good. Let's just send it in and see what happens, right? You don't want to get flagged, right? I mean, so whatever process you have, if it's internal, if you're working with a larger company, outsource, insource, you want that audit process to happen before you send it in, not after. Because by the time they ask for the medical chart, it needs to be good. And you can't go back there and fix it. And so whatever kind of performance improvement process, when it comes and from that, and Sam McMaster taught me a lot about that, is this is an opportunity to learn and to train and to establish trends internally. I mean, because if you continue to see a pattern for multiple therapists that they're not documenting something, that's probably an education or a training problem that we can fix. It's not just a coincidence, right? Mm-hmm. And so it really is an opportunity. And I think a lot of times people will be like, we'll just kind of figure it out. But so anything that you can do, whether that's using AI, whether that's outsourcing to another company, the whole revenue cycle process, or whether that's finding somebody to come in and do an audit and documentation training. People like that. I know people like that. That's super important to do.
Yeah, we also see, it just allows the clinicians to offer even better care, and it's like a lot of times people perceive AI as being, a huge time saver. Maybe I could replace some people instead of looking at it as how do I leverage my people to provide even a higher level of care.
Man, you hear about clinicians spending 20, 30, 50% of their time doing documentation. That's time they can be meeting with patients and talking to them. It seems like 30 or 40 days is a long time. It's not. The more time that a clinician can have is huge. To be able to actually face to face with the patient. So that's always our goal. How do we get clinicians to only focus on patient care and documentation and not all the other busy work?
Yeah. Can you help us break down why the pay to patient issue is starting to really wreak some havoc?
Yeah, so pay to patient's been wreaking havoc for a long time. And I know that
it got better and now it's not gotten better.
I know, and it's just when you think about it, it's just absurd. You're like, how could this be? And I know for me, in early recovery, if I would have opened the mailbox and had a check for $20,000, it might not have gone too good.
Right.
And so, to think that that's a process, and so state by state, we're seeing them pass laws. But just because you pass a law doesn't mean it. You snap your fingers and immediate. Then then it becomes a process. To hold a payer accountable to do it. We're still seeing it in the South. There's a couple states in the South. I know we're seeing it in Kentucky. Some. And so the first step is to get together and pass legislation. And I know that we're working on that and we're doing that. And usually if you can get involved in a state or a regional or a national, you can push that along, because to think about paying for a lobbyist yourself, you're like, man, that seems like a lot. But get 20 people together and it's not that much, And so, the first step would be to, change the laws, and the second step would be hold the payers accountable to not do that anymore. But yeah, we're still seeing it, and nobody does a good job at collecting it.
Yeah.
Tracking down this route, with the laws, are you seeing that that they're being honored or gamed?
Well, I think that once they pass a bill, right, then I'm the last person to talk about political process, but once they pass a bill, then it has to become a law, and then they have to enforce it. So I know that there's a group in Kentucky that passed it last year, and everybody's like, hey, man, they're not going to do it anymore. Well, they're still doing it, right? Because it's a little bit of a process to enforce. Maybe it doesn't seem active to the next year, and then after there. So I feel like we're making progress. I know that Pennsylvania's working on something. I know that we're talking about somebody in D.C. Internally we have a group of providers, and we have a lobbyist that we're working on a variety of things, and pay to patient's definitely one of them.
Well, let's stay on this trend here for just a moment, because we all remember back in the day when Parity passed.
Yeah.
Right. And we all thought that, maybe naively, that all of a sudden it was going to change everything in our industry. It's still really not enforced fully, right?
It's not enforced. And it's still a little gray. So it's kind of like parity is passed and it's kind of like a theory,
Right.
This is the way it should be.
Right.
But you have to break it all the way down. One of the things we recently did is we got together with providers in California and pushed a bill through called SB 999 that was saying on peer reviews, right? So we would look at peer reviews, and so say you are getting a hysterectomy, right? Well, only 5% of those went to peer reviews. But we're over here in behavioral health, and 90% are going to peer reviews.
Right.
That's not parity,
Right. Exactly.
And then when we dug a little more, just because we have so much data, we found that certain insurance companies, so the same doctor, the contracted doc, would be denying 85% for Cigna, but only 40% for Anthem.
Right.
Same doc. We know that those. I mean, there's no chance that it's the patients that are changing.
Right.
So that's not parity, right? And then we dug a little more. And we found that like we have like podiatrists doing behavioral health peer reviews. That's not a peer.
Right.
I mean, that's a peer if you have a foot problem.
Right.
Right. And so, past that, in California, got the end and they combined it with something else. But, that's a big deal, because all that goes into parity of it not being the same as, as medical.
But I mean, very few people have the sort of purview that you have in, in order to see that kind of data.
Yeah.
I mean, even just what you shared is like, I think we intuitively think that's what's happening, but don't really have the information to do it. So how do you make that actionable? So I mean, so the legislation in California is great.
Yeah.
But I mean, how do we let more people know that and then actually hold people accountable to making it happen?
Yeah. So for us, and for me, I'm lucky to be able to kind of have my hand on the trigger to be able to say, hey, we want to spend the money to expand this education in this brand, because if we can do it in California, we can do it in Tennessee. If we can do it in California, we can have a lobbyist and do it in D.C. And we're starting to talk with NATAP about that, who is really the premier advocate. There's a couple, but premier advocate for stuff like that, for helping providers, therefore helping people access treatment. It's going to be combined, right? Listen, if you got all the money to do it yourself, fire away. I mean, ask me. We'll share any type of unidentifiable data that moves the cause to parity or access to treatment. We have that stuff, and we'll partner with anybody.
I was going to say, so are you open to people reaching out and basically saying, let's take some de-identified data?
100%.
Okay, that's a fantastic resource for people to recognize.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
100%.
How is that's a very forward-looking approach that you and Aaron are taking. What's driving that?
So I think just for me, working in the field for a long time and really realizing that pounding the table doesn't work. Hardly ever works. Well, this is the way it should be.
Right.
Well, we all know the way it should be.
Right.
But you have to sell it to the lawmakers, or you have to sell it to the payers in a way that makes sense to them. And that situation is different. And there's a lot of opportunity. We work with a couple legal firms that are in big civil suits. I mean, we're working on 2 or 3 all the time of giving them the data. So I think that the more that you can associate with the good guys and get together in a larger organization, I mean, there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's just so jumping topics.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise around UnitedHealthcare lately, and I don't know if you want to weigh in a little bit on what you're seeing, how it's affecting providers out there. But be great to get
I think it
your
is. I think what an awful incident. Right, and I think that the what we saw after it, with people saying, just shows the type of pain and fear that people are experiencing around that. Insurance is tough, and when you're utilizing your insurance a lot, it's because you or a family member are sick, right? And so it's a very emotionally charged kind of topic, right? And I think that when we say, hey, we're gonna fight this. Right, it's the difference between a peaceful protest and a riot. Peaceful protest, fantastic. Right, because you're getting together and you're showing this is important to us, and let's figure it out together. Riot, not so much. Right. Same thing with, hey, UHC. What you're hearing is a lot of your members are angry, are scared. So giving them the opportunity to do something about it instead of saying, hey. We're gonna take this matter into our own hands. So I understand, and I think that what we saw, what we know as working in the healthcare, that we're dealing with people that are sick, and we're dealing with family members that are just terrified, and they think their family member is going to die. So we know how important it is, and I think now people are really starting to see that change is good, and I think that. We will see, but I think UHC has embraced that, and they're looking to make some change, hopefully with PR and stuff.
Yeah, do you see a real shift there?
I hope so. I think it'll take some time, and I think that hopefully some good can come out of a real bad situation.
It's interesting. We were talking about going to conferences and starting to see payers show up. Well, I mean, there was a moratorium where UHC executives were not allowed to be public.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I'm wondering if that is starting to taper off just a little bit, and maybe they're starting to realize that the solutions are working together.
Yes. Yeah, I would hope so. I know that there's a variety of payers that we work with that are really focused on PR and initiatives. And I think when we look at value-based care, I mean, I remember talking about value-based care in 2012 and thinking, oh man, this is a no-brainer.
Right.
It's a no-brainer. Here we are in 2025, and still not that actionable.
Yeah.
I just think it's a long run. It's a marathon.
Yeah, I want to back into the value-based thing
Yeah.
for a moment, because I mean that has been a buzzword for as long
know.
as we've been in this industry. Is it just a beach ball we just bat around, or do you think there's really something there?
So as it comes to the solution for a sick person, it makes total sense.
Totally.
Right? 30 days in treatment is a good start. And we know that if you don't have continued services after a 30-day residential stay, the likelihood of you relapsing is extremely high.
Right.
So the idea of keeping somebody in the system for a longer period of time makes total sense. The idea of going in for behavioral health, but also say you have diabetes, but you also have a drug problem, you go to get treatment for your substance abuse and you stop, but you're still eating a bunch of sugar, you're going to end up in the hospital, and you're going to die from diabetes still because they haven't been treated. So the idea of whole person health makes a lot of sense. But the problem is you got one guy over here that wants to do medical, one guy that gets behavioral. Well, how do they share it, right? And then if you give $100, how do we split it up?
Right.
And how do we show? And I think that's where it's been hard to kind of figure out, but we are seeing the emergence of companies that say, hey, we're interested in doing it all. Now the insurance companies had to figure out how to pay them for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love the fact that during an audit that Hansei, like you and your team, you step in and you sit side by side with the executive teams of these providers. And I guess if I'm not working with you, what should I do to kind of prepare for an audit? What are some of the better practices?
Well, the best way to prepare for an audit is before you get the audit, right? To make sure, because like I said, they're custom. They're a lot more common. They're a lot more custom-made. I think Cigna has a team that does post-payment audits very often, and that's not because you're doing anything wrong. That's just how they're holding themselves accountable and payers accountable or providers accountable. So I think the best one is to feel confident that your documentation is ready at all time for anybody to look at it, and you do that through training. And I'll just speak as a clinician, and I say this all the time. I'm trained to help people do better and then chart that they're doing better, right? But if Jeff's in treatment and I say, hey, man, Jeff's doing great today, insurance company's like, fantastic. Sounds like he's time to go home.
Time to leave.
So it's not like, so when you talk about medical necessity, you really want to focus on something that clinicians aren't trained to focus on. Clinicians are trained to focus on progress, but documenting based on medical necessity said, yes, we know that there's progress, but these are the medical symptoms. These are the quantitative, data that we're seeing that shows that this person needs to stay in that level of care, and that's the way that you document to optimize length of stay. That's what they want to say, but as a field, I was never trained. I did go to school a long time ago, but I was never trained to how to document based on medical necessity. I didn't think about medical at all. I just thought about clinical. So that's a big thing to change, and it's not. You can't just tell a clinician, "Hey, start charting differently." Right? You need to train them. You need to send them to training. You need to do online stuff. You need to bring somebody in, and that's probably the biggest shift that people can do to prepare themselves. To have compliant documentation.
Yeah. What looking into your crystal ball?
Yeah.
What are you seeing as some of the maybe bigger challenges or trends that are coming up in maybe the next 12 to 24 months in the payer provider space?
So I can tell you what I think I've seen as a trend from larger parent companies, and that's going to continue to evolve. Man, I think, speaking for myself, maybe in 2018, we're like, man, we're going to do everything in-house.
Right.
Because if we do everything in-house, it'll just make our multiple, it'll make our value bigger. That's what we really thought.
Right.
Right. But you can't do everything the best, digital marketing and outreach and stuff like that. How much can one or two people do, when you've got companies.
Especially when it's changing so fast.
That's right. And companies you're involved with and stuff like that, that's all they do. Revenue cycle, that's all we do. Right? That's all we do. 100% of everything we do is only focused on optimizing and doing this. So we're starting to see larger parent companies start to be open to outsource again as PE has a seat at the table. We're seeing that a lot, right? And that's not just revenue cycle. It's also, some marketing. It's also some other stuff like that. And so we feel like that's going to continue, and that's good news, right? Because we can always do a better job because we're only focused on that. And just like if I, go to a mechanic, right? I'm not going to go there for dental care too. I'm only going to go there to be a mechanic because that's what he does. That's the only thing that he does, and he's an expert at that. So I think as we look at that, and as valuations are starting to change, I think valuations are now based on your kind of growth potential. Mm-hmm. So we're seeing companies go into different states, take commercial and Medicaid, right? Have the full spectrum of care. So even though maybe overall we're seeing residential, length of stay get a little shorter, we're seeing people expand that to also have partial and IOP and keep people longer. We're seeing, which is a huge need, both young adult and adolescent, both rates and length of stay improve, and that's because the needs improved. Right, and that's both for residential and for outpatient, especially for primary mental health. I think that everyone is realizing, hey, you don't have to wait, right? You don't have to wait until you're in the hospital or a drug overdose or you get a DUI or you go to jail. There are some factors and there's some flags that we can see as an adolescent that you can go at a lower level of care and get that support and talk about it and get medication and do education. So I think that we'll continue to see the emergence of outpatient resources, including telehealth, which is really good news,
Yeah, you touched on this just a little bit, but how do you see like marketing, some of the better ran like behavioral health companies, how do you see like marketing playing a role in sitting side by side with what you do?
Yeah, so it's marketing's been interesting. So for me, I always put myself in the position of who's looking for treatment. So if you're a treatment center, I always put myself in it's a parent, it's a spouse, maybe it's how do they access it? Internet. Right? Probably Google. Google's changed a lot. Google's trying to, clean it up and stuff like that. So there's always that. But every region and every state's different. Nashville, super busy, right? A lot of treatment, You go to, Cincinnati or Indianapolis or Louisville, not near as much. So your strategy, really changes. And I think that no matter what, it always comes down to when you're talking about healthcare, especially behavioral health, how can you show someone what the experience is going to be like? And how do you really lean into the empathy? I think that the days of showing the beaches and the pools and the stuff like that are kind of going away, even though, listen, I love the beach, right?
Yeah.
And I think that now people are really kind of leaning into more personal content, more video.
Definitely.
And that's good news, right? Because if I'm sending a child to treatment, I want to see the person that he's going to be with. I want to see where he's going to stay. I want to hear them talk about the reason that they do what they do is because they've committed their life to helping people. That's what I want to see, and that's kind of the decision. And so, I think sometimes marketing wise, if you can maybe kind of push through the sponsored ads, and then get to the closer regional ones, I think that content has really. And that's what we're doing too. Yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
Right. Exactly.
People really want to hear about both personal and kind of business.
Yeah. We talk a lot on this podcast about how we've never viewed marketing as transactional.
Yeah.
We always try to focus on each opportunity is to go beyond transaction and go to transformation.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing you say that you're trying to do as well.
Well, we've learned some interesting things at Hansei, and marketing and sales. I've been doing it a long time, and I'm just such an amateur, when it comes to it. And some of the biggest thing we've learned in the last couple of years is we have a dog calendar where we have employees and their dogs. Best content ever.
Yeah, people love that.
People love it because it makes them personal.
Right, exactly.
When we go to conferences and stuff like that, I send the account managers. Like I don't have a marketing team at all. Right, and it's just me and Aaron and Carly.
Yeah.
So we send the account managers because that's who you talk to. That's who they want to meet because it doesn't make it transactional. This is the person I've been talking to for 2 years. You know everything. It's so good to see you, and understand and be here with you.
Patrick, you know this as well as I do, and I'm on this hobby horse all the time, which is people refer to people,
right,
not programs.
Yeah.
And as great as Hansei is, and as great as the reputation of Hansei is, they're calling Aaron, they're calling Patrick. It's really, it boils down to what is that personal relationship. Yeah. So I'm not shocked at all that the dog calendar is the
dog calendar is really good. And when we our EHR we came out with last year is called Benji, right? The dog. But I think that and we've I've been able to lean into some stuff at Hansei that I haven't been able to before in behavioral health, and really focused on wellness. We have a big running challenge. So every May and September for mental health and for substance abuse, we have a running challenge. It's how many miles you can run or walk in the whole month.
How do I sign up?
Listen, I won every year until last year, where Gail, our chief people officer, hired like a triathlete that just smoked me. So I'm gonna have to prepare again this year. But you hear about people that usually don't, that are walking like 10 miles a week. And if you work and you're sedentary and you're sitting behind a desk, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
When you look about quality of life. And so, to be able to do stuff like that, and then we take the money that we earn, upwards of $5,000, and we donate it. We just we donate to the Bridge to Recovery, in Bowling Green. Amazing program. Yep. Changes people's lives, does a great job with burnout for clinicians, right? They have a professionals program so we went there, we donated the money, we did a video, and we shared it to say, hey, this is really something that's moving the needle. And also to be able to do stuff like that is really awesome. And by the results that people are interested in that stuff.
Yeah. Wow. Patrick, that's amazing. Like as we start to like wrap up the
Yeah.
episode, this has been great. Is there like a time frame that somebody should engage with Hansei? Am I ever going to be too small, or
Yeah.
should I start early? What?
So we're definitely not the right fit for everybody, but if anybody that calls me, I get them to the person that is the right fit, So there's just a lot of factors, but I refer out the majority of people that call to find them the best fit. And sometimes I say, hey, I think maybe you can do this in-house for the first year. Or let me look at what services you're offering. How complex is this? The higher the complexity, the more expertise you need on it. But if you're one location and you've got one billing code, and you've got two therapists, there's a lot of options there. I've got a lot of channel partners that are regional treatment centers, regional billing companies that I refer to a whole lot. And then if they get over their head, they call me.
Yeah.
So the majority of work that I do is probably non-revenue creating for Hansei. We might want to cut that out. But what we're doing is, so for me, and I committed this long ago, is everything that I'm doing eventually helping someone access treatment. Right? And the guy that's opening the small IOP in the rural town, that's important to his town. So if I can help him, that means he can stay open, he can grow, and he can help somebody else access treatment that might not. So that's why we take a lot of those calls.
Yeah, I don't need to tell you. I know that stuff comes back to you probably tenfold.
Yeah.
Just you're doing the right thing. And we've just had a lot of guests on here that it seems like they all lean into, it's not about the money. It's about doing the right thing especially in this industry. It's, very meaningful.
I was looking at the videos that you guys did and seeing Landon right before this. And, really people that I would, when I see somebody, I'd say, I'd work with them.
Yeah.
I'd work with that person. I'd hang out with. I'd have a cup of coffee with them.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're in it. Their passion's in it.
Yeah. Is there anything that you think maybe we didn't ask or that you
sure
want to
there's a
offer
lot.
that?
we could keep going.
We could keep going. We could keep going forever. I think when it comes to revenue cycle, it's never been harder, right? Insurance feels like it's never been trickier.
I agree with
and I think that you just have to ask questions. And we talked about it earlier. Go to a conference, listen to people, hear about what other people are doing. Don't feel like everybody's in competition. There's enough business to go around. We all know that. And that the problem's not getting better, right? So when it comes to having the business out there, don't let thinking that a competitor or somebody else restrict you from learning and improving your documentation or your knowledge or your process. Ask. That's what I would say more than anything.
Anything you've learned this week that you want to share? You're always learning and growing. So what have you learned this week, Patrick?
Man, learned this week. I don't know what I've learned this week. I know what I do want to say. I know that recently we had a loss in the field of our good friend Jamie Vance.
Yes.
And it was good to see everybody. And shout out to Cumberland Heights who put on a wonderful memorial. And I was thinking about that on Monday because somebody called me. It was a tough case and said, "Hey, I need treatment for this person." And I started out. That's my go-to.
Yep.
Right, Jamie?
Oh,
Where's this person go? And then I was like, "Oh man." I know. So
I've had two of those moments in the last couple of weeks, and it just really stops you.
It really stops. It makes you just kind of take a step back and say, this could everything could change when it's your time to go. And what am I doing today to maximize that? And that's why it's so important when you contacted me to participate in this, because I feel like you guys are doing the same thing. You're moving the needle.
Yeah. It's funny that you bring up Jamie because obviously he meant a lot to a lot of people, including me, including you, and then Mark. You probably didn't know Jamie like we did, but I would say something that I've learned in the last week is just reinforce the importance of personal connection.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad, I didn't mean to stump you. I wasn't trying to stump you, but it's like we came around to.
Yeah.
What I've learned is just like you can never overstate the impact that a relationship can have.
Call that person, shoot them a text. Do whatever you can. Send them a note. I think that, and if there's something that is there, and you think, well, I'm kind of still, I'm still maybe mad at that person, just send them a note anyway. I'm thinking about you.
It is. Maybe you're doing exactly what I'm doing, but it's like in the past I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to bother that person. I don't know if I want to bug that person, and I'm like, nope, I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Nope. How you doing? Checking in.
Yeah, just checking in, just thinking about you. I said, nope, I don't need a response. Just thinking about you.
I'm going to give Jamie credit for that.
Oh man, the best.
He used to send me music.
Oh, dude. So it was funny. He had two types of music: super inappropriate workout rap, and then really classic country. Jamie was he was great, but he was a connector if there ever was one. And I think that it's definitely something to aspire to be, to send those texts like, I'm thinking of you, thank you, I appreciate you. that kind of stuff. Because you never, I definitely, whenever I get one of those, I'm like, wow, this hit right at the right time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Patrick, you're a super connector. Yeah. So it's like, I mean, it's amazing that you came on today.
Yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of stuff that we could talk about.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe we'll do it again.
Yeah.
But I mean, I hope this is a great experience for you.
It is a great experience. And Carly just started a podcast.
Oh.
So we'll have to get you on.
All right, let's do it.
Over there. So
I would love that.
I'm excited about that too. And it's so great to meet you. In the team
definitely,
here.
Patrick. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise and the passion for the industry to the show today. It's just it's been an awesome episode, Jeff. Thanks for all that you do too. So really appreciate it. That's a wrap for today's episode. A huge thanks to Patrick with Hansei Solutions for tackling billing, payer trends, and revenue cycles for us. From me and the entire MasterMined team, thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and let us know your thoughts on ongoing billing battles in behavioral health. Until next time, MasterMined signing off.
That wraps up this episode of MasterMined. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, MasterMined is not just a podcast, it's a community. So don't forget to comment, subscribe, and review us. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content that's relevant and relatable. Thanks again to our sponsor, Snapshot, a digital media marketing agency. And thank you for joining us on MasterMined, your behavioral health playbook.